Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast presented by Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Steven. I am the host, as always, and joining me is my guy Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How are you doing today?
I am not frustrated, not tired, but yesterday I set aside, a good chunk of a few hours to get through prospects and try to just, a couple edge rushers, a receiver maybe, a tight end. And I'm cranking out all this work and I'm watching and I'm taking notes and I've got grades and I go to make my big board and it's 11 players after the last like 3 weeks of watching guys. I don't know how some people do it. I don't know how some people dedicate their entire lives to it, but yeah, a long way to go to even to try to get to 50.
Yeah, that's something about us on this show. We will not shortchange this process. I don't take notes. I mean, I take notes while I'm watching a prospect, right? But I'm not able to slap a grade on somebody realistically and feel comfortable about it until I at least watch like 4 games. And sometimes, for a player that I'm like really conflicted on, or a player or two players that I'm like, trying to break a tie on, I'll go back and watch some 2021 tape as well, or sometimes even 2020, like depending on like, like Brian Brzee in this class, right? Everybody's like, okay, like kind of have to throw the tape out the window this year, obviously because of the circumstances around his injury and his sister passing away. So him, you have to go back 3 years to like realistically get a feel of like what he's like on tape. So yeah, it's always funny. Like obviously we're late, a little bit later on in the process, right? But like, when the Chargers are heading into their playoff game, people are like, oh, like it's so and so or bust. I'm like, it's January. Like, what are we doing here? Like, let's let this process play out a little bit more and see where we're at, like mid-March or so.
Yeah, I mean, the first mock that Daniel Jeremiah sent for the Chargers last year, I believe, was Bernard Raymond, who ended up going like fourth or fifth round and was getting
Yeah.
bullied by Braden Fajoko and company in that game. So, things change quite a bit, of course. I don't remember a lot of people having even Zion on their radar. I think for the most part, it was tackle or wide receiver, which it seems to be most every year anyway. It ended up being Zion. So I mean, somebody had Zion on a mock once. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, I don't know. Who would that be?
We loved them. We loved them,
Yeah.
though. So that was easy.
Yeah, no, this time last year it was Jordan Davis or bust. Everybody wanted the Chargers to take Jordan Davis, and oh, he's not going to be a top 15 player. Like he's definitely going to be there, and like they're going to be able to take him, and then he goes and runs like a 4.67 or whatever it was at the combine, and then people are like, oh shit, like he's not going to be on the board anymore. It's like, yeah. You got to let this process play out. I mean, now that we have the Senior Bowl behind us, it's definitely full speed ahead. But we'll get there. We're putting in the hours. Obviously, I've been watching. I joked earlier this week that I wasn't going to be watching the running backs anytime soon. And then everybody kept on talking about Bijan Robinson. I was like, okay, I'll watch Bijan and then I'll call it. And then I'm not doing running backs for like, I'm going to put them last.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, I can't just have one running back graded. That's going to piss me off. So I'm through four running backs at this point. So, there we go.
Yeah, wasn't a huge Gibbs fan, I believe.
No, Jamari Gibbs from Alabama. He's not like, the more I learn about like what's successful in the NFL and like really like what becomes an RB1, I just don't really see it with Gibbs. Like I think he can be definitely a legitimate, quality change of pace back. But to me, he just doesn't have the contact balance. He doesn't have the patience, the vision that I think really require in the NFL to be able to, make people miss, in the hole, create yards from nothing. Like I think those two things are really underrated when it comes to like judging NFL running backs. So I think he can be like a Michael Carter type for the Jets, or that kind of role where he's giving you 600, 700 yards rushing, 400 or 500 yards receiving. He is a really good receiver, absolutely. But I'm laughing like at all these people who are like putting him in like a shade below Bijan Robinson. I'm like, that's not even close. Like to me, he's closer to like that Michael Carter or like a James Cook kind of receiver. Not saying he's them. I think he's better than that kind of prospect. But people who have him like really close to Bijan, I'm like, I don't see that at all.
Yeah. It's been a few years since we graded him, not many, but where would you have Bijan compared to Najee Harris?
I would have Bijan ahead of Najee. In that class, I think I had Javonte Williams higher than Najee, actually, if I remember correctly. Bijan, I think like he just does some very unique things. Like I think he's going to be a very interesting like case study in terms of where he gets drafted, because like we've seen running backs be so devalued. But you
Right.
know, as Frank points out, I do think he is a top 5 talent in this class. Like I think from a pure grade standpoint, right now I have him as my second highest graded player I've graded in the last 4 years, right behind Panay Sewell. So
Wow. Okay.
Bijan's got an insane grade, man. Like I think he gives you everything that you could possibly want from a running back in today's game. And I mean, he's able to go out and realistically, I think he could be a slot receiver, like full stop, if he really wanted to. But just the ability to make people miss in the hole, the ability to have that burst at the second level, he can make people, he can run people over. You know, he's stiff arming Alabama linebackers and safeties like it's nothing. So I don't know, like he's gonna be on my wish list. I still think I would probably prefer one of the edge rushers for the Chargers, but like if he's sitting there at 21 and it's like him or like Jalen Hyatt or Michael Mayer, like I think I honestly would prefer Bijan at this point.
Well, I have to ask the question then: Bijan Robinson or Dalton Kincaid?
I think it would still be Bijan. I love Dalton.
Oh, wow.
And there's a lot of personal connection there, personal, fondness, and lots of emotional attachment. But I think Bijan I think he walks into the league and is a top 5 running back in the league right away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Eagles are going to take him, but they're certainly in a spot, and that's kind of like the popular one right now is Bijan to the Eagles. If that ends up being the case, yeah, you can stick him top 2, top 3 in the league immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some other better landing spots, but I think in this class where there aren't like a ton of blue chip prospects, like I think Bijan is absolutely one of them. And theoretically, like that's somebody who should go in the top 15, but we'll see how that plays out. So here today we're here to talk about some Super Bowl takeaways, some lessons that the Chargers can learn. We got Alex in the chat. What's up, Alex? Appreciate you tuning in today. So we're going to talk about some lessons that the Chargers could learn from the Eagles, from the Chiefs, in order to kind of make their own leap. We do this every single year. I feel like it's a very common one. I wrote a pretty extensive article about this for LAFB last year about the Bengals and the Rams. So excited to dive in here. Before we dive in there, Tyler, obviously, food is a big aspect of the Super Bowl. So what are your top 3 Super Bowl dishes that you got to have on Super Bowl Sunday? And then we'll dive into the real stuff.
We sort of try to theme it up. So like my mom's making cheesesteaks tomorrow because she's from Philly. So like it kind of just depends. We could do some like sort of barbecue thing as well. But as Eagles fans, at least my family, we're doing cheesesteaks. She does always make these like crispy, doughy artichoke triangles that are just so good. I saw a picture of them. There's like 6 different stacks of trays in the freezer right now with these artichoke triangles. They'll be amazing. So those. After that, I don't know if I have like another go-to. It's kind of just the theme of the game, I guess. Rice. I know it's kind of on brand, but everything goes well with rice. So I would have rice, whatever the theme of the week is, and then for like a food grab, bite sort of thing, artichoke triangles.
I'm gonna need that recipe for the artichoke triangles. That sounds amazing.
So good.
Speaking of rice, did you see the picture of food that Braden posted? I think it was on like Thursday with rice in it.
He's been just posting things. It's just all this. Well, he's posting a lot of things, but the rice with something on. I forget what it was.
It was like the rice with a spaghetti in it. I was like,
I
don't know. That's
a whole different tier. Like I'm like, I like my rice, but I don't like this like rice with spaghetti. And like he just looked like he found whatever was in the pantry and was like, that's what I'm gonna do. Like it'll be Doritos and hot sauce and Kraft mac and cheese and rice. Like just threw whatever he wanted on that. But I guess nose tackle.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we got a couple people pointing out the beer looking good today, Tyler. So there you go.
Why today? Okay.
I don't know.
Thanks, guys. No, I appreciate that. Asians don't grow beards, so I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, this is the white side of you, I guess.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on. If you're wondering what like genetic variation looks like, it's me, I guess, because I have dark hair and a reddish blondish beard. So I have no idea.
There you go. I'm at the point now in my life where I'll get like random gray beards in my
Mm.
gray hairs in my beard, and Brooke likes to pluck them out because she thinks it looks weird that I just like I'll get like one random gray hair here, like
Oh
one over
yeah.
here, and she'll yank them out. So here we
Yeah.
go.
My dad has like perfect dark hair like his entire life. He'll be like when he dies, he'll be a skeleton with an afro, but he's got like one gray hair in like one spot. And like that's his one weakness. Like that is the missing scale in Smaug's armor. I'm jealous.
There we go. There we go. All right. So my top three, Solo points out, you got to have a dip. I'm a big chip and dip fan at the Super Bowl. Lately, I've been doing this because I like to make them. This is my contribution to the Super Bowl party. So
Mm.
I do this spicy Italian sausage queso dip. So it's spicy ground sausage, it's cheddar cheese, cream cheese, sour cream, and then onions and cilantro.
Oh,
And it is like it's just everybody loves it. It's definitely a crowd pleaser. So that's the go-to. I'm a sucker for a good queso dip, and that's the one with the spicy Italian sausage.
yeah.
Other than that, my mother-in-law makes these like little miniature hot dogs that she wraps in crescent rolls.
Yeah.
Those are fire.
Mhm.
And then also like sliders are fantastic.
Sliders are great.
I'll eat wings. I'm generally not a huge fan of wings. I don't like getting my whole face and all my hands messy eating wings.
Yeah.
So a place that does really good wings, I'll eat with like pizza. But for the Super Bowl, like I don't want to have to like go wash my hands and then like go sit down and watch the rest of the game. So yeah, dip, like some kind of mini hot dog, corn dog kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the sliders, I think, would be my top three.
Yeah, I think I liked the food at the Super Bowl before I actually liked watching football. It was just like, oh, whoa, cool, we have food, great. So you just like whatever it was at the time, and like we had less money then, so just kind of whatever we could, frozen teriyaki chicken skewers or cream puffs or something. Like it was just cool to hang out, watch Super Bowl, of course, eat some dip, like you said. So yeah, fun stuff.
There we go. Are you a deviled eggs guy?
No, I'm hit or miss when it comes to eggs. I don't like hard boiled eggs. I don't care too much for deviled eggs. Um, it really just kind of depends.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm anything that's like egg based. I'm not a huge fan of. Like egg salad. Just no, not a big fan.
Yeah, there's one thing I can't stand because I just had a rough experience with it. Was like potato salad or macaroni salad, which I know is like a big thing and it's something everyone brings to some potluck or event or something. But I just had one when I was in Chicago and I was just trying to be nice and I just got sick after I ate it and I can't eat it anymore.
Yeah,
Just kills me.
those kind of foods are always fun. I got really sick one time from eating Jimmy John's, and I cannot go back and eat it ever again.
Am I frozen?
Yeah, you look frozen a little bit.
Why am I so excited? I'm still here. What happened?
What were you talking about then?
I don't know. Let me come back.
There we go. We're good.
Am I
We're good.
back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay, great.
All right, so we'll get into the nitty gritty. I obviously love the food takes on this show as we always have them, but Super Bowl Sunday, I think it's a good excuse to talk about food. So, all right, we're going to talk about again some lessons that the Chargers can learn from the Chiefs and the Eagles. I think there's a lot to be said about these two teams and the way that they've each kind of gone about building their rosters, getting to this point. I think one thing that definitely stands out, like looking over the draft history of both of these teams, is how fickle the draft really can be at certain times. The Chiefs in particular, they got three quality starters from last year's draft in 2021. Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith. And then this past year, they got Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Brian Cook, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, Isaiah Pacheco, all playing meaningful snaps for them
Mm-hmm.
in this draft. And this is not necessary lesson. I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah.
In 2020, they went Clyde Edwards-Helaire,
Yeah.
Willie Gay Jr., Lucas Niang, L'Jarius Sneed, Michael Dana, and Thaddeus Keys. So that's a little bit kind of mediocre-ish. But then in 2019, it's Mecole Hardman, Juan Thornhill, Kalen Saunders, Rashad Fenton, Darwin Thompson, Nick Allegretti. 2018 was Breland Speaks, Derek Nandi, Dorian O'Daniel, Armani Watts, Tremont Smith, and Khalil McKenzie. So they went like all 2018 and 2019 without getting like legitimate starting talent. And then it was like, boom, here's like 9 starters in the last 2 drafts. So I just thought that was a funny thing to point out in terms of like roster building and how fickle the draft really can be at times.
Yeah, they were not a great drafting team. I mean, they got Patrick Mahomes, so that kind of buys you some time.
Right.
And then suddenly, as soon as the money kicked in, they're like, oh, yeah, we'll draft pretty well. And suddenly they just have, I mean, it's sick to look at the Chiefs. There was a point where you thought, okay, like, I mean, they're going to move, pay Patrick Mahomes. They moved on from Tyreek Hill. Like, this is it. This is it, guys. And then they just had 2 knock it out of the park drafts. This past one, I mean, and they have some guys waiting in the wings that could be good too, just for depth purposes. It's sickening because there was a point where the Chargers really could have taken over, and instead the Chiefs went, oh yeah, we'll just have, top 3 drafts 2 years in a row and find instant contributors, some of them, all pro talent kind of guys. It's sick, but good for them, I guess.
Must be nice. Getting 3 starters on the third day of the draft is crazy. All right, so in terms of lessons learned, I'm going to start with the Eagles here, and I think the Eagles in this particular matchup and really the whole season, right? Like their biggest advantage, I think, over every team is what they're able to do in the sense of the pass rush, at least on defense. So you look at, they have like 75 sacks or whatever it is. They have 5 guys over 10 sacks this year. It's just been insane. But Howie Roseman is obviously, very intentional with like how he wants to build his football teams. And a lot of it is through the pass rush. And so I went back and looked. And so he became the general manager for the Eagles in 2010. And there was like a weird stint where he was like president of football operations instead, and then went back to being the GM. But since 2010, the Eagles have drafted at least 1 edge rusher in every single draft. Again, that's 12 drafts that the Eagles have had since Howie Roseman took over, and they have taken at least 1 edge rusher in every single draft. Like not every single one is going to be a hit, right? But
sure,
I think you really look at this list of players, and sometimes it's a Brandon Graham in the first round, and that's been a fantastic pick for them. Other times, it's a Joe Kruger or a Taylor Hart in the 3rd rounds or the 4th rounds or the 5th rounds. And you don't really know who those guys are, but they do it so frequently that it gives them more chances to find somebody like a Josh Sweat, who they took in the 4th round. And Josh Sweat has been arguably their best pass rusher this year. It's either him or Hassan Reddick. So they take shots at the pass rusher market so often in the draft that every once in a while, like you're just going to hit on one, and you never know if that guy is going to be a double-digit sack guy for you. And, I think that's similar to like my takeaway last year from the Bengals was that the Bengals takeaway was that they take a receiver every single year, like at some point in the draft. And you just want as many bites of the apple as you can have at these premium positions. And I think the Eagles, exemplify that from a defensive line standpoint. So the Chargers, since Tom Telesco has taken over, he did not take a pass rusher in his first draft in 2013. He took Jeremiah Tauchu in 2014, Kyle Emanuel in 15, and then there wasn't an outside pass rusher, or excuse me, Joey Bosa was 2016, my bad. And then no outside pass rusher in 2017. Then Chenna Nwosu in 2018, Emeka Egble in 2019, no outside pass rusher in 2020, no outside pass rusher in 2022, and then Chris Rumpf in 2021. So the Chargers are basically every other year they'll take a pass rusher. The Eagles are every year, and I think that's a change that that Tom Telesco and company should absolutely adopt going forward.
Really in general, and you said it, it's the investment in premium positions. Maybe it isn't an edge rusher. And if you have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, I understand that you're not going out and just like, I'm going to take an edge rusher in round 1 or round 2, but like
Right.
you can't neglect them overall. And that was part of our gripes with the draft class the Chargers had last year. It wasn't necessarily the players that they had. I think, you can see a world where a lot of these guys develop and, do well in this league, but they just ignored the premium positions. And now, what are the Chargers' biggest needs heading into the draft before free agency? They don't have a right tackle, and there's no backup plan behind that. They need a receiver because they, at some point, will need to move on from their guys. They need an edge rusher because they did not have that last year. I mean, Derek Tuska, Jeremiah Tachu, all respect to them, but like these teams, the Chiefs, the Eagles, they've been able to avoid the cliffs that have been plaguing the Chargers. I get it. Not every single guy can be an excellent player. You can't just have, an Andre Dillard or whoever waiting behind Trey Pipkins and just doing nothing, but then like he can start and, does okay for you. It doesn't always work out like that, but you have to keep trying. You can't just have like the process of not focusing on tackle here, but the result of Trey Pipkins working out is fantastic. The process of relying on him and Storm Norton and one of those two to work out, and that's it, was terrible. Not to mention you had Jamari Salyer. Like, thank God for Jamari Salyer because you had no plan. It would have been Storm Norton, Foster Sarell against, Nick Bosa and the 49ers. Thank goodness for Jamari Salyer. You need to have a better process than that. The Eagles, did they need to go get Milton Williams in the 4th or 5th round last year? Maybe not, but now he's doing great work for them. Did they need to go get Teron Jackson? Not necessarily. Did they even need to go trade for Robert Quinn? No, not really, but they have him. And if something happens where someone gets hurt, you have Robert Quinn as edge 4. Like you're doing okay for yourself. And I think, when I'm looking at the Eagles, you talked about, I'm looking at the Chiefs. You talked about the Eagles and the pass rushers. Look at the Chiefs this year with their receiving room. They're the best passing offense in the league. Granted, again, you have Mahomes, you have Andy Reid. It's always going to be good, but they didn't just rely on that. There was no, we'll just like have our 2 main guys and that's it. I mean, Sky Moore is like their wide receiver 5, maybe, and he's a guy who, put like 65 yards against the Chargers in that second matchup. Like their room, it's not a superstar room. That was kind of the point. Obviously, they moved on from Tyreek Hill, but they have a deep rotation. And in the middle of the year, they go, yeah, let's go get Kadarius Toney. And I bet you in the Super Bowl, we're going to see some plays where, the investment was worth it. He's going to make some of these special plays for them. And I mean, the room is McCole Hardman, who's, I believe, on IR now, but Kadarius Toney, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore. Is that the greatest, tandem or trio you can field, in the NFL? No, of course not. The Eagles have that duo by a mile, but they have a deep room. And if someone gets hurt, we're not going from, like Josh Palmer is the last guy in the receiving room who could like actually step up and do something in a starting offense. For the Chargers, I mean, they hit a cliff where they couldn't even find a guy. They couldn't even field more than 5 guys, or dress more than 5 guys on game day. At one point they had Jason Moore and they were just making him inactive. Michael Bandy, they couldn't really find out much to do with him. And part of that's the offensive scheme, sure, but they just did not have the guys.
Right.
And maybe I missed this from the Eagles or Chiefs. I don't know. But I don't think there was a point where, the offensive coordinators for each team were up there on the podium going, yeah, we just don't have speed, or we just don't have the guys. Because they weren't begging for the team to go get wide receivers because the Eagles went and got AJ Brown. The Chiefs went out and got Kadarius Toney. Like they were able to find weapons. Whereas, Joe Lombardi, again, a lot of scheme issues for sure, but he went to the podium and said, we don't have speed. Like we do not have a speed threat in the room. And Telesco and Staley went, okay, good luck. That's fine. And again, there were plenty of scheme issues, but they kind of left him out, hanging out to dry as well. So the investment in these premium positions, edge rusher, like you said, for the Chiefs being receiver, it's paying off. And that's why they're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think like you're saying here, avoiding that cliff after your starters is huge. And, you look at the Chiefs in particular from a receiver standpoint, again, not the most stacked room, but you enter the season with starters, your starting trio being Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster, and McCole Hardman. injuries to those guys didn't tank their receiver room. And obviously they had the midseason acquisition, but you have that starting trio. None of them are star players by any means. None of them are like legitimate wide receiver ones, but then you also draft a Sky Moore. Then you also trade for Kadarius Toney. You have Justin Watson, waiting behind him. You're taking these swings on these receivers, and in a playoff game where you lose Juju Smith-Schuster, you lose McCole Hardman, you lose Kadarius Toney, you have the guys behind them that can make up for things, and obviously their tight end room is making up for it as well. But you have a Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you have a Sky Moore who was a top 50 pick. You have a Justin Watson to go in there and step up and make some plays. And like imagine if Keenan Allen had gotten hurt against the Jaguars, like where that wide receiver room would have been in a playoff game with Josh Palmer, DeAndre Carter, and Michael Bandy again back at it. So we'll see how the process changes this year with Kellen Moore for the receiver room. But I talked about this last year with the Bengals. The Bengals were taking receivers every single draft, just like, because you never know who that dart throw is going to be and who can hit. Obviously they're spending some first round picks and second round picks on guys, their main three guys, but you never know when a fourth round pick or a fifth round pick is going to turn into somebody who can be a viable replacement for a Tyler Boyd, be a viable replacement for Tyreek Hill. And I think that's a great point as well. I think another lesson that the Chargers could take from the Chiefs is the aggressive nature in which they really addressed their weakness last year, which was the secondary. So obviously you're talking about replacing a Charvarius Ward, you're replacing Tyrann Mathieu, two guys who played a lot of great football for you, and they go out and it wasn't just like, oh, we got Trent McDuffie, we're good, like we're fine now. They go out there, they also draft a Brian Cook, they draft a Joshua Williams, they draft Jalen Watson in the 7th round. Again, you never know when these guys are going to become something. And so they knew that they wanted to get younger, get more athletic, get more physical in the secondary. And it wasn't just like a 1 or a 2 player, solution. It was like, we're going to go be aggressive here. We're going to bring in this competition and we'll see what happens. They also had some other players that were like starting in front of them. They had Rashad Fenton who was playing for them. They ended up just being able to cut him because they're like, we love all these rookies. Trent McDuffie, their first round pick, their very first pick, was injured. I think he missed like 6 games. Okay, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, you're set. Like, let's go. Let's rock. And I think that's something that the Chargers have never really done outside of like Joe Reed and KJ Hill, who didn't really ever become anything. So like when you have these depth problems at receiver, at tight end, at edge rusher, like go be aggressive and go attack those positions, and don't just say like, oh, we're just going to play the board and take the best players. Like if you have needs, like take multiple swings at it in one draft. And I think, in this draft in particular, like from a receiver perspective, you don't really know how long Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are going to be on this roster. You might have to cut Keenan Allen this year. But regardless of what happens this year with Keenan Allen, I think the Chargers will be really wise to double dip at receiver, double dip at tight end. Not obviously all of these things, right? But you have a lot of starters on this roster who have uncertain futures. And I think double dipping at some of these positions would be really, really smart for this team in the draft. And, maybe that's taking a Jalen Hyatt in round 1 and then, going back in on day 3 and adding another receiver, like the kid from Princeton who people are pointing out that's like 6'3" and can run like a 4.2 40 or whatever. So again, I haven't done a ton of homework, legwork on day 3 of the draft for receivers, but I think if you're really trying to be aggressive and solve your depth problems, you have to double dip at some of these premium positions because, like Tyler was saying earlier, you didn't take any of them last year.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers have done a really good job the last couple of years of targeting at least one position group and overhauling it. Last year it was the offensive line, which that continued this year. And then this past year was, the interior defensive line room, which is completely different. They added, 4, 5, 6 guys or whatever it was. So they did a really good job with that. But they were able to have the luxury of just being able to spend a ton of money. You could just go get Corey Linsley. You can go get Sebastian Joseph Day. You can go get Morgan Fox, Austin Johnson, Matt Filer. And then you burn, your first round picks on offensive linemen. They don't really have that luxury this year because they have no cap. And they could find a way, of course. But as things currently stand, there's no one they can really, afford that's a starting caliber kind of guy right now outside of bringing their own guys back. They have to go in the draft and double dip at some positions to aggressively address these needs. It can't just be like even if they keep Keenan Allen, if they go get wide receiver, great. Like go get a receiver in round 1, fine, totally get it. But you can't stop there. This receiving room can't be 4 guys you feel really good about, and then we'll hope it works out. You have some uncertainty both with contracts, with injuries, with development of Josh Palmer. Don't just rely on we got one guy, we're good. Again, if you look at the Eagles draft last year, it was just trenches. Interior defensive linemen, edge rushers, someone in the 7th round, someone in the 5th round, someone in the 4th round. They just knew that they had to keep retooling these spots, and it clearly paid off for them. So yeah, an aggressive push. I don't know what it'll be this year. Obviously, we'll see. If they cut Gerald Everett, we'll kind of know where they're going. If they cut Keenan Allen, we'll know where they're going, that sort of thing. But whatever it ends up being, I hope it's aggressive. I hope it's more than just one guy.
Yeah, absolutely agree there. Alex and LD Bruin also pointing out, trading down. Like Tom Telesco never does it.
Goodness gracious.
All these teams do it. I mean, you look at the Eagles draft history, and there's 6 classes since Howie Roseman has been in the draft that the Eagles have made 12 picks. Again, you just never know when these guys are gonna hit. I think the more bites at the apple, the better at this point.
Yeah.
Tom Telesco was very proud of the fact that he traded 2 of the 7th round picks this year to get back the 6th round pick next year. And it's well, you could have had 2 players instead of 1, Tom. You could have had 2 chances to draft players instead of 1.
Yeah.
And the Chargers only have 7 picks this year, and that's not enough. Now that you're starting to prepare for this, Justin Herbert contract extension, you need as many picks as possible, and you need to hit on as many picks as possible. And just heading into every draft when Justin Herbert's making $52 million or whatever it is, and you have 7 picks in that draft, it's not good enough. You need more picks, more chances to find these quality players, because you just never know when you're going to be able to find these late round gems. And it's you're heading into day 3, heading into day 2 with those 5 picks. It's you're limiting the amount of chances you get to really make an impact. And there will be some comp picks that come here and there, but them having only 7 picks, if they make only 7 picks this draft, I think that's at least a bit of a failure for Telesco this year.
Yeah, I would say so. I don't really know, again, because I have my big board is 11 players right now. So I can't say I know what the draft looks like from top to bottom, but
yeah,
it doesn't really seem like there's going to be too much of a significant difference if the Chargers drafted 21 versus 27, 28 or something.
Right.
I could be wrong. I don't know. I knew this a lot more last year. This year, not so much. But if you can, trade back. And hey, if you want to trade back and then later in a different round, trade up, that's fine. I mean, the Eagles traded up for Jordan Davis, but then they traded with the Saints. They traded back with the Jaguars in the 5th round. I think the Chiefs traded up in the 1st round, but then they traded back in the 2nd round for Sky Moore. Find ways to be able to move over the board, because sometimes, especially if you look at the 3rd round this past season, the Chargers there were guys that were right there that would have loved for the Chargers to have. Maybe it's a Nick Benito or something, just a few spots away. Some people argued that, maybe the Chargers wanted to go get, what's his name? Zamir White. That's more of a conspiracy sort of thing, because we never actually confirmed that. But then they went out and got Isaiah Spiller. Oh, shoot, I was going to get this guy. Now I have to take this guy. Whether you believe that, I don't know. But sometimes there's guys they're just so close. And, if you just trade back a little bit and find some ammo to also move up later on, do that. I would like to see the Chargers move around the board, not just up for a running back, up for a linebacker, up for another linebacker, up for another linebacker. I would love to see them, trade back and acquire some picks, because the Chargers had 4 picks on day 6, or excuse me, not day 6, on round 6 and round 7 combined. And are they all going to hit? Not necessarily, but Jamari Sawyer is now a starter along the offensive line, I'm assuming, for $900,000.
Yeah.
And in theory, Jaw Taylor could be a starter at slot either this year or next year for, a fraction of the cost. Dean Leonard's playing on special teams. Xander Horvath is kind of sort of a starter, but that was the best part of the draft was round 6 and round 7.
Yeah.
If you just accumulate one more pick, if you're a GM that goes, a 50% hit rate, let's say on picks, get 2 players or get 2 picks, because then your odds are you're going to hit on one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Tyler, any other lessons you want to mention here from these 2 teams?
Yeah, last one, which is I talked about the Chargers don't really have cap space this year, so I don't know what they can do. But in general, and I think the Chargers really did a good job with this past offseason, was finding the talented players at discounted prices, which sounds so easy. Like, oh yeah, just go find the guy. But like, the Eagles said, oh, Kaiser White, no one's paying you. Let's go take you. That's great. James Bradbury, oh, that's a really nice low contract. You just got cut. Let's go scoop you up. Nakobe Dean was someone that was potentially a first round pick, but there was that injury, and they said, yeah, we'll go get him. Chauncey Gardner Johnson, and this, to a slightly different extent, but Hassan Reddick, who I swear to God, we've been wanting the Chargers to sign for 14 years.
Yeah.
Nobody wants Hassan Reddick, but the Eagles said, I like those numbers. I see a discount. Let's go get him. And I don't know what he's making, but it's probably not all that much. I think it's like 16 to 18 million dollars per year.
No, he's like edge 14 on the market.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
right. And what are his numbers this year? Ridiculous, as they were the previous 2 seasons with the Panthers and with the Cardinals. But the Eagles they made the smart decisions to go buy low on these guys. And again, it's not super easy to just go do that. Not everything works out. But I feel like in Telesco's, career, he's found some good buy low options. And this past offseason, how great is it that we had Morgan Fox, Bryce Callahan, Kyle Van Noy playing for like $4 million combined. And now you either might have them back or you'll get comp picks for them or something. And of course, you had production from them last season. So easier said than done. But I think following the Eagles' profile pathway of just finding these low cost, higher upside sort of guys, go find the discarded guys that still have something left to prove. And I think that you have to at this point, because when Herbert's contract kicks in, you can't just go find the $100 million guys.
Alex is picking Hassan Reddick to win Super Bowl MVP already. So I think that's honestly a pretty good bet. I don't know what the odds are, but yeah. Tyler, I think that's a great point, though. I mean, like, I can't even imagine where the Chargers would have been this year without Kyle Van Noy and Morgan Fox and Bryce Callahan, and like how much worse the defense would have been if they had just like rolled with the draft and their previous free agency stuff. So I think that's a great point. So when again, you're living in this world where you're going to be having expensive contract at a quarterback, you're going to have to be able to take swings like that. And I think the Eagles have done a good job of that. They don't have an expensive quarterback. They still technically are paying Carson Wentz, I believe, from some dead money, but I think the Chiefs have done a good job of that as well. And the nice thing about those post-draft free agency signs is they don't count against the comp pick formula. So you can really help yourself that way. And again, comp picks is really kind of becoming a cheat code for a lot of these teams, and the Chargers should definitely be a team to take notice there. All right, Tyler, how are you leaning for this game? How do you see this Super Bowl kind of playing out tomorrow?
Oh, man. Oh, hello, Mom. Thank you for the super sticker. Yes, Exton, Pennsylvania. That's where my mom is from. That's where the Pennsylvania roots are. What shall I do with my winnings? Vegas bound. Let's go Eagles. She's betting on the Eagles. She's betting the amount of money that her address was at Exton, Pennsylvania. No, it's not. Thankfully, a 5-digit number. It's not like that or anything. It's a 3-digit number, so it's not going to be.
Okay, I was going to say, if that's still a 4-digit number, that's still a good chunk of change. So
yeah. No, 3-digit number. I mean, she could go out and do a 6-digit number if she wanted or something, but no, just a 3-digit number. So hopefully she wins. Where am I leaning? I do think the Eagles pulled this one off. I just think they're kind of a train that keeps on rolling, and they're pretty good in the trenches. I think anyone who just goes out and says that like the Eagles have a clear-cut, obvious advantage at every spot, I don't really buy that. Of course, other than tight end and quarterback. I think the Chiefs are closer in some regards to the Eagles than maybe some people think. But overall, I just think the Eagles just have it all together right now. They're great in the trenches, and they're good in the secondary, and they're good at the premium positions. I just Mahomes can do amazing things. It'll be a close game, but I am leaning that the Eagles win.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs, like defensive line in particular, you have Chris Jones, Frank Clark, weirdly is like second all time in playoff sacks. It's the weirdest thing to me how he just like is a below average pass rusher in the regular season, and then the playoffs he's like the best pass rusher in like the history of postseason pass rushers. So the Chiefs have a good defensive line as well. They're playing well. I'm a big fan of the Chiefs linebackers. This young secondary for the Chiefs plays. They're very opportunistic. So I do think the Chiefs are going to make it close. I mean, there's a lot of people kind of predicting an Eagles blowout. I don't really see that happening. I mean, you have Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid. Like, you're going to have a chance in every single game that you head into. So I think the Chiefs will make it close. I just think that the Eagles, what they do in the trenches is so overwhelming throughout the course of a game. I mean, like the 49ers defense managed to keep it close, but eventually, they just started to wear down Nick Bosa and company, up front. And I think it's the same thing from the defensive line perspective. Like, you're able to throw all these guys, like, not even just from an edge rusher standpoint. You have Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox in the middle, as well as Linval Joseph and Dominican Sue and all these other guys. So I think the Eagles are just overwhelming in the trenches, and that's why they're so good. So I'd say I'd pick the Eagles probably winning like a 30-24, 25 game, something like that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Any idea what the line is?
Alex is in here. Alex can tell us probably quicker than I could look something up. I want to say it's like Eagles -3. That would be my guess right now.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I don't know if anybody else in the chat besides Alex wants to let us know what the line is, but yeah, I would imagine it's a close one. Yeah, and as Everett points out, we got to watch Kaiser White. The Eagles have a few Utah connections too. Obviously, Britton Covey, my guy, the punt returner, then Brian Johnson. So they got some Utah connections in there. Alex says Eagles 2.5. That's what he thinks it's at. So there we go.
Cool.
And my brother's an Eagles fan too, so
nice.
Worked out, I guess.
Yeah. I typically root for the AFC. Like, if I'm out of rooting interest, I'll just kind of lean towards the AFC because that's our conference. But nope, Eagles on this one.
Yeah, you can't root for the Chiefs. All right, so what's up?
Oh no, Alden, one of our YouTube members, sent a question. I didn't know Alex Tanney. Were you familiar with him?
No, actually, I'm not.
You have to let us know who that is. Alden.
Is he the assistant quarterbacks coach?
Did you expect Daniel Jones, quarterback coach from college, and the Raiders quarterback assistant, whatever, to be interviewed?
The fact that is the only interview we know about is something. He's been in the NFL for one season. Like, come on, what are we doing here? All right, so Alex Tanney was hired by the Eagles in 2021 as a quality control coach. So I guess similar vein as this other guy. Tanney played actually 9 seasons in the NFL. He mostly as a backup quarterback from 2012 to 2020. Okay, so he's just barely getting into coaching. All right. So he's played for several teams, including the Cowboys in 2013, Browns, Buccaneers, Titans, Bills, Colts, and Giants. So he's kind of a younger guy, played in the NFL. I guess I wouldn't be like opposed to this, but we'll see what happens there. It's a good one. Yeah. I think that's a good call.
I don't know how often you get a new quarterbacks coach with a ton of experience, but I don't know. This is a very important hire because in theory, Kellen Moore is gone in a year. So this is your 2024 offensive coordinator potentially. So I don't know if I'd love the idea of a guy with 1 year in the league to be, and eventually 2, of course, to be the future offensive coordinator. But I don't know. I don't know how many guys are usually interviewed for a quarterback's coach job. I mean, for the Chargers, it was 1 linebackers coach interview, and they got the guy, and that was it. So I don't know if this is like an intentional, just this one guy and that's it sort of thing.
Yeah. I don't know if you would know this. Is the Rooney Rule applicable to all coaching hires or just like head coaches and coordinators?
I believe it was head coaches. Now it extends to coordinators, and I believe that's it. Maybe front office as well. But I don't think it applies to position coaches.
Yeah, so obviously the Chargers did hire, I almost said Ron Howard again, Jeff Howard, the former defensive backs and passing game coordinator for the Browns. He's coming over to coach the Chargers linebackers this season. So he's never coached linebackers before. I am a little, I don't want to say concerned, but I guess curious to see how this works out since he has never coached linebackers before. That's a bit of a difference going from secondary to linebackers, and I would have liked to, I keep on wanting Brandon Staley to get more experienced coaches in the room, and he keeps on going back to these younger guys, which if that's the way that he wants to do things, like by all means, go ahead. But I feel like you could have gone out and gotten a little bit more experienced candidate, at least someone who's actually coached linebackers before.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my other lessons from these teams, is finding a couple of assistants, a couple of guys. Now, you might get a Joe Lombardi, but I do think there was some stability in that first season. That was good. It just didn't pan out. But yeah, I would have loved to see them find a couple of veterans, because you also get your Ryan Fickens, who just come in and turn things around in 3 games.
Yeah, so Alex pointing out Rooney Rule is all hires. And I guess you don't have to announce interviews for other non-coordinator head coach positions. So that is also true. Getting back to the quarterback coach here for a second. And chat, you guys can start asking questions too. I should have said that, but we'll pivot to our Q&A portion of the show. Pep Hamilton was not renewed by the Houston Texans. He is available. What would you what's your take here on potentially like bringing him back? Do you think Staley would do it? Do you think that he would be a good fit for Kellen Moore? Because I mean, everybody's going to keep asking us about this, because there's that fondness of the way that Justin Herbert played as a rookie.
It's tough to say with Pep Hamilton. As far as a quarterbacks coach, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you see the success that he had early in the league with Pep Hamilton and Justin Herbert paired. So I think that's a no-brainer. It's really looking ahead to that offensive coordinator role. And is that a good fit? I don't know exactly how much Hamilton and Moore's schemes, kind of blend with each other or fit. I don't know. As a quarterback coach, I think it's a no-brainer. But again, we are looking ahead to 2024, because this is your potentially your offensive coordinator, and it's not entirely his fault, but it's not like the Texans had a fantastic offense either. Which kind of sours things. I'd have to do more digging into what the Texans were trying to do, because they, weren't the best offense unless they were playing the Chargers.
Yeah, I think Pep Hamilton, I think he's a really good quarterbacks coach. I think if you look at obviously what he did for Justin Herbert and then going to the Texans, I think Davis Mills was definitely better as a rookie than he was last year. And I think some of that is Tim Kelly, the offensive coordinator. Some of that is Pep Hamilton being his quarterbacks coach. And then you look at what Pep Hamilton did this year as the offensive coordinator, and Davis Mills did not look like a quality young quarterback. He looked like he was somebody who had taken a step back. So I'm not opposed to him coming back, but like Tyler is saying, I think you're wanting somebody who has that potential to be the offensive coordinator next year. That's kind of why I thought Gerard Johnson would make a lot of sense as quarterbacks coach, as LD Bruin points out in the chat too. Somebody who has the schematic ties that Brandon Staley wants, and also somebody that has played the position in the league, played the position in college. He's kind of like a coach on the rise that theoretically could be ready to rock as offensive coordinator next year. So I think he would check a lot of boxes for them. And I love the idea of having 2 former NFL quarterbacks in the same room, working with Justin Herbert going forward. I think that would be a really smart thing for them. So Gerard Johnson would make a lot of sense for me. These other 2 that, we talked about today that have 1 year of coaching experience, I'm just not super interested there. So I think Pep in a vacuum as a quarterbacks coach would be fantastic for Justin Herbert. I would be, uncomfortable with the schematic fit here, because Brandon Staley wants his coaches, pretty clearly to be in this West Coast Shanahan kind of hybrid system, or even all Shanahan system, McVay system. And, Pep Hamilton has his roots in the Jim Harbaugh system, which I don't even know how you classify that one, specifically, but I just don't think he's really a schematic fit for offensive coordinator. And then also, you're talking about, the offensive coordinator history is not great for Pep. I mean, not just last year, the Texans, when he was the Colts OC, it wasn't great either. So, I'd be cool with it, but I'm not that would be this is a home run, no brainer.
I guess in theory, he could just be the quarterbacks coach and then remain the quarterbacks coach. It's not like the Chargers have to promote their quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator. It just seems like the progression. So I guess he could join as quarterbacks coach. Tom Telesco has brought back coaches before. I believe at least Ken Wisenhunt. I'm trying to think of another potential coach I'm thinking of, but at least Ken Wisenhunt Although that was kind of a Phillip Rivers sort of thing. But
Right.
again, in that same vein, if you're doing
That's
that for
very
Phillip
true.
Rivers, you could do Pep Hamilton for Justin Herbert. So
Yeah,
definitely possible.
absolutely. All right, so we'll get to some questions here. We'll see how obviously the Chargers handle this quarterbacks coach position hire. I would love to see them get kind of a more experienced coach in there, but we'll see what happens. So we'll take questions for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, so you guys can fire away. Obviously, any super chats are greatly appreciated and encouraged. So, let us know. Let us hit us with your best questions.
We're still here, audio audience.
We are still here. Yeah, sorry. I was scrolling up to see if anybody had asked something different. So
It's a pretty light chat today.
everybody's getting ready for the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I get it.
Well, Chad, I heard about an extension, but I can't talk about it.
I'm sure we'll drop.
Question.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll drop some hints throughout the rest of the off season, like you did with the Joey Bosa news and all that.
Yeah. Now I have to be careful now, though, because I feel like I'm going to accidentally put something that completely doesn't make any sense, and people are going to run wild with it. So I guess that's part of it. That's
the Rashawn Slater,
yeah, man,
address thing.
Yeah, man. One person knew it. Lived in Huntington Beach or Fountain Valley. That was a fun one.
Yeah, that was one. Blaine Paulette wants to know, did we see enough Horvath last season to start giving him opportunities at running back? I don't know if we necessarily see him get involved at running back, but I am curious overall to see what the plan is for Xander Horvath going forward, because like I watched 6 games of the Cowboys tape and I don't think I saw them use like a regular fullback once. It was always like a 6 offensive lineman or one of the tight ends. So don't really know if fullback is really something Kellen Moore prioritizes.
Not to hijack the conversation, but I'm now going to have to ask you a question. Can you tell me about the Hulk package?
Yes. So the Hulk package that Kellen Moore did throughout the last couple of seasons, it's just variations of ways to get 6 offensive linemen onto the field. So obviously they had Connor McGovern the last few years, somebody that they actually paid a good amount of money to like come over. And so if you look at his snaps, like there were games where he was playing like 15, 20 snaps as a 6 offensive lineman. So the specific Hulk package is this like old school wing tee package. So they'll put Dak in the pistol, they'll have regular 5 offensive linemen, and then to Dak's left or right, they'll have a tight end and then McGovern, and then a running back behind him. So it's like this old school like wing tee shotgun variation of it. And I think the players started calling it the Hulk package because it
okay.
I mean, talking about Zeke was usually the running back, so he's a big running back, and then Connor McGovern, 6 offensive linemen, and then a tight end. And they did some really cool stuff out of it, man. Like there was even a time where it wasn't McGovern because McGovern was starting, but they brought in the 6 offensive linemen and they actually had him run a route, man. I was like so happy. I was like, this is awesome. I love this shit so much. But generally speaking, they'll do like 2 receivers, and you're just able to do like these really cool route combinations out of this package. And they would have Schultz line up next to him and then running like choice routes out of the backfield, and then you have like your 2 receivers running go balls or comebacks or posts and corners. Like I think you can just it's a really creative way for them to like scheme up things. So I had heard about it, like I read Dallas Cowboys Wire article about it, and then I watched them run it, and I'm like, this is fucking awesome. I love this.
Let's get Luke Musgrave in the backfield, have him fly on a go ball or something.
Yeah. And whoever the 6 offensive lineman is, like, because this whole year I was like, the tight end room sucks. Like, use a 6 offensive lineman, like get better blockers out there, and they never did. It pissed me off. So it will not be an issue with Kellen Moore next year.
Hope not.
Some people guessing about the extension, so we'll keep you guys guessing for the rest of the spring. I guess it's really for like the next month, but Thomas Martinez, JT Woods' future at safety or corner. What do you make of JT this spring and summer, and what he's able to potentially offer the Chargers next year?
Okay. Their plan, clearly, it seems, was to make him the starting safety in 2023, right? Which makes sense. You have Nasir Adderley leaving. You don't maybe feel so great about him. You invest a high pick and a safety that you can develop, and not a first rounder, Dax Hill, Kyle Hamilton kind of type, but you develop him, and the following year, you make him your starting free safety with Derwin James. Great. Everything about the plan was great. The plan did not work out, unfortunately, or it has not worked out so far. I don't want to discount what he can end up doing. I think he will find a role, but I only see him as a free safety, and frankly, I think he's their safety 3 next season. At corner, as far as corner goes, I think he tried 1 or 2 reps there against the Rams, and I know Daniel Popper pointed that out, but I think that was literally because they did not have other players available once they pulled the starting group. I don't think they actually want him at corner. I have not heard that they're trying to actually make him some sort of corner. So I think he's their safety 3 next season. I think maybe at some point, you take over for Alohi Gilman, but I think Gilman's earned at least the right to be out there and be the safety 2 until they either draft somebody else or he gets hurt or doesn't play well. So I think he's safety 3. I don't think he's a corner. And I think because they have Jaw Taylor, because they have Dean Leonard, those are the corners you're developing. JT Woods, hey, take some reps at corner during training camp or, find some other ways to be useful. Absolutely. But I don't think he's going to be their corner. And he wasn't doing a lot of man-to-man stuff in college really anyway. So it's not like I feel like, he's not like Dax Hill, I guess, right? If he wasn't like out there in the slot in coverage almost half the time, not quite the same. So I think he's just a deep free safety, not a corner.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I think like in an ideal world for JT, like he's somebody that can be a free safety and also maybe match up with some tight ends. Like I think because of his size and his length, I think that is something that could be in his future if you're talking about like best case scenario. I think you give him the reps, you can certainly try and cross train him and see where he's at. But I think his best attribute is absolutely, playing as a center fielder, reading and reacting, making plays on the football, using that speed, that range. So we'll see what happens. They need him to take a leap this year because like theoretically you draft another day 3 guy. Maybe you roll with Raheem Lane as like the safety 4 this year. We'll see what happens there. Mark Webb obviously on a futures contract, but it's like if your safety room is Derwin, Alohi Gilman, JT Woods, and Raheem Lane, like you need JT Woods to take a leap forward. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they'll have the luxury of taking a safety to like come in and challenge Alohi for the starting spot. I like they have so many other needs. Would it shock me if they drafted a safety earlier than people think? No, like if Brian Branch for Alabama is like the best player at 21 and Brandon Staley wanted to take him, like wouldn't shock me. But at the same time, like we just spent, the first half of the show talking about like pass rushers and receivers and tight ends and like all these things, running back is a need, defensive line is a need. So, there's a chance that the safety room is the room that it is right now. There's a chance that that's the room that we see come week 1. And if JT Woods is not able to be like a viable NFL player, that's going to be a big, big problem.
Yeah, I think the 4 safeties that are like the projected 4 right now, I think they all make the team unless someone gets hurt. I think Raheem Lane makes it now with Ryan Ficken being like, yeah, that's the guy I want there on special teams. He's going to make it, and he's on a cheap contract. Yeah. So I think he's out there. You're not cutting Alohi. You're obviously not cutting JT Woods. Clearly, you're not cutting Derwin James. So I think that's your 4, and maybe they had a 5th guy, but they haven't had a 5th safety in the room since I couldn't even remember when. Maybe Stuckey as a special teamer. Not that he was the 5th guy, but
no, I can't even remember. I mean, in Brandon Staley's defense, it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted 5, but I don't know where you get that 5th one because like you have all these other needs, man. And again, you only have 7 picks. If you trade down, you want to get a safety, like go for it. But it's just like they need JT Woods to take a leap. Interesting question here from Ryan in terms of draft
Mm.
strategy. If they don't re-sign Morgan Fox, do we prioritize getting a pass rushing defensive lineman, or do you think they want a third edge rusher more? So this is an interesting spot because I don't think there are that many pass rushing defensive linemen, interior guys that I think really make a lot of sense for the Chargers. There are definitely some hybrid players. Like they could certainly take like a Keon White in the first round from Georgia Tech, as Alex Katzen pointed out. He's somebody that can play on the edge and inside.
Hmm.
Maybe you talk about a Carl Brooks, later from Bowling Green, who play inside and outside. But if you're talking like true interior pass rusher, it's like Brian Brzee, who theoretically could fall, but again, how much do you trust his instant impact potential? Or Kalijah Cansey from Pittsburgh. Those are both guys you probably have to take in the first round. So if you don't re-sign Morgan Fox, again, this is another thing. It's like you need all these other players, but if you lose Morgan Fox, you have no interior pass rush heading into the season.
No, I thought that could have been Otito, and maybe it still could be, but then they started playing him a lot more as like a nose sort of guy, which
Yeah.
surprised me a bit because that's not what I would have expected. I think he did perform pretty well there, but then if that's kind of your role for him, you don't really have a guy. So I think if they don't bring back Morgan Fox, I could see them because he didn't have a great year and it's probably going to cost nothing. I could see them looking again at Akeem Hicks, who I believe is a free agent. Again, didn't have a great year, but like you're out of options and you don't have money.
He'll be cheap.
And he'll be cheap. So I could see the Chargers doing that, developing Otito, that sort of thing. But as far as like a pure pass rushing defensive lineman, I don't know how you would solve that with all your other issues. But,
Yeah.
and you're not going to find a guy that's going to get 40 something, 45, 50 pressures this season either.
Yeah, I think at some point they will add a defensive lineman in the draft because,
Mhm.
Austin Johnson's a free agent after this season.
Yeah.
There is some uncertainty in that room. So it wouldn't surprise me. Christian Hernandez, following up with this, says if we don't keep Fox, this team isn't serious. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Like I think Morgan Fox is a fantastic player.
Yeah, I do appreciate what Drew Tranquil has done, but I feel like they have a half decent plan behind him if they don't, bring him back. And I also feel like it's just easier to replace a linebacker in the system. I mean, it could just be Troy Reader for another veteran minimum contract. With Morgan Fox, like, yes, he's more expensive, but that's kind of all you have. Like, and Trey Pipkins as well. Like, this is it. This is the guy you probably have to use. Those two guys you have to prioritize because there's no replacement on the team, and it's very difficult to go find someone like that in the draft.
Yeah, and I think like also people really underestimate like how difficult it is for a rookie to come in and like be a quality pass rusher. Like, I mean, even if they take Kalijah Cansey, who I think is probably the most pro ready interior pass rusher, there's no guarantee that he hits 25 pressures and 4 sacks, let alone what Morgan Fox did last year, where he's getting 40 and 7 and also has top 10 in the league from a per play basis. So losing Morgan Fox would be a big deal. I think it's like you have to see where his market goes, and if it's like past a certain point you just can't afford him, I would understand that.
Yeah,
But if he's somebody who goes and makes like a $5 million contract, it's like you probably should find a way to do that to keep him.
Yeah, I don't want to see another Kaiser White situation. I do think it is possible because of how difficult it is for Joey Bosa to do what he does. He's an edge rusher, but I feel like the injuries that pile up and what he asked himself to do, the angles that he tries to take, the kind of freaky stuff he tries to do, I feel like he could not hold up better inside, but I feel like there's less opportunity for him to get as injured trying to make difficult angles and bend and cut back and that sort of thing. Not that he'll be, an interior rusher, but I feel like if you lose Morgan Fox, you don't necessarily have to go get another defensive tackle that can rush the passer. If there's no one good, go find a good edge rusher in round 1 and let Khalil Mack, let Joey Bosa kind of work more inside and kind of, try to get the pass rush that way. Again, not a defensive tackle, but it's some way they can try to, replicate what they had last year.
Yeah, I think what you're mentioning, like what you're talking about here, maybe you go and draft, like I said, a Keon White or Carl Brooks or somebody like that who can play on the edge and inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go sign Hakeem Hicks, and then you just have a little bit more flexibility. You have somebody like Hakeem Hicks who can start whenever he's healthy, if he's healthy,
Right.
start for you. And then, that rookie hybrid rusher, if you will, can kind of do both. And I think that also would help the run defense. Like, Keon White being a bigger player, like I think that is something that in terms of like edge rushers that they probably should prioritize these bigger edge rushers because you have Chris Rumph on the opposite side, who's obviously much lighter.
Yeah.
So having that kind of balance between like the speed rusher of Rumph and like a power rusher, I think would make sense from a backup standpoint.
You watched Keon White yet? I haven't looked at the.
I have not. I've not been able
okay.
to track Keon White film from 2022. So,
Gotcha.
but
Yeah.
apparently like lit up the Senior Bowl and he's like 280 pounds. So I
Former
think
tight end.
I think Daniel Jeremiah has him as like 12th on his top 50. Like a lot of draft guys. Yeah.
He does a lot of things. He's new to the position and he got hurt and there was a COVID year. So it's like, I think he's 24, which is probably going to kill his draft stock a little bit, push him, into round 2 maybe. But like he flashes so many different things, and he's such a talented guy that, I mean, I really would consider taking him. Not at 21, but that'd be a guy I'd love to have in the second round.
There you go. Did you see any other questions you wanted to hit, or you want to stop it there?
Not ones that I could answer, like the one from LD Bruin. Will Tito be ready for the start of the season? I really don't know. That's a great question. I just don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, that's somebody we'll have to ask. Something we'll have to ask Jameson, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe we can do an off-season injury recovery thing with him this year.
That'll be depressing.
Yeah, but I mean, like people need to know it.
Yeah, no, people watch it, so makes me money.
There we go. All right, Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out today?
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Nice, short and sweet. Appreciate all of you guys tuning in live today. Obviously a bit of a quieter Saturday. We are going to start diving into our official draft rankings shows next week at this time. So it's going to be, fast and furious towards the draft from here on out for us. So excited to really kick that up a notch. And then we'll have a show planned, of course, on Wednesday. We'll let you guys know time and place for that. But, should be fun. As always, if you are listening to this, please leave us a rating or review. We always appreciate that. Make sure to share this episode with your friends. Football is always better with more people listening and tuning in. So appreciate the word of mouth if possible. So that being said, that's going to do it for us today, guys. We'll see you on Wednesday and hope you have a great Super Bowl weekend.